The screams echoed down Maple Street, as Mrs. Hargrove pointed a trembling finger at the front door. "This is a family neighborhood, not some den of sin," she yelled, her voice cracking with righteous fury. Little did she know that in less than a week those same lips would be apologizing profusely, while the whole block swallowed its pride. Blakely Thompson gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, her knuckles white as the pounding on the oak door grew louder. At 32, she had built a career as a senior marketing executive at a downtown Chicago firm where she navigated boardrooms with cool precision, but nothing prepared her for this midnight ambush in Willow Creek, Ohio. Juliana stood beside her 30-year-old school counselor with her arms wrapped tight around her own waist as if holding herself together against the storm outside. Their shared home, a modest 2-story colonial they had bought together 2 years ago, suddenly felt like a battlefield. Blakely glanced at her wife, the simple gold band on Juliana's finger catching the overhead light, a secret they had guarded like a fragile flame. Outside, the crowd swelled with at least a dozen neighbors' flashlights slicing through the dark lawn. Mrs. Hargrove, the self-appointed president of the Homeowners Association, led the charge, her face flushed under the porch light. "We have a petition," she shouted, waving a clipboard. 27 signatures saying your living arrangement is not appropriate for our children. We see you two always together, no men around, laughing too loud at night. This isn't right." The words landed like blows, each one laced with the kind of casual cruelty that came from people who thought they were protecting virtue. Blakely felt the familiar burn of anger rise in her chest, but beneath it a deeper fear twisted her gut, the same fear that had kept them silent for so long. Juliana whispered, her voice barely audible over the roar outside. "Blake, what if they call the police? What if my family hears?" Her brown eyes glistened with unshed tears, the weight of years of hiding pressing down. They had met at a quiet book club in the city 3 years ago when Juliana was still reeling from a bad breakup, and Blakely was tired of pretending to date men to keep her conservative colleagues happy. Their connection had been instant, a shared laugh over a worn copy of a novel that spoke of hidden lives turning into late-night talks, then stolen weekends. When they exchanged vows in a small private ceremony at a lakeside cabin last spring, it felt like the bravest and most terrifying choice of their lives. No big wedding, no announcements, just them and 2 witnesses swearing to build a life together in secret, because the world outside Willow Creek was not ready. Blakely pulled Juliana close for a brief moment, breathing in the faint scent of her vanilla shampoo. "We face this together," she said, her voice steady even as her mind raced through worst-case scenarios: job loss, family estrangement, losing the house they had poured their savings into. She unlocked the door and stepped onto the porch, the cool night air hitting her face like a slap. The crowd fell momentarily silent as the 2 women appeared united under the porch light. Mrs. Hargrove thrust the petition forward. "Sign this and agree to separate, or we escalate. The kids see you holding hands at the park. It's confusing them. It's wrong." Blakely met her gaze levelly. "Wrong according to who? We pay our taxes, we keep the yard perfect, we never bother anyone." But the words felt hollow against the wall of judgment staring back. A younger neighbor muttered something about Sodom and Gomorrah, and another nodded vigorously. Juliana stepped forward, her hand brushing Blakely's for strength. "Please just leave us alone." Her voice trembled, but there was steel beneath it, forged from nights spent crying over her mother's voicemails demanding she find a good Catholic man and settle down. The confrontation dragged on for 20 minutes, accusations flying like arrows, each one chipping away at the careful facade they had maintained. Someone mentioned seeing them kiss through the window last summer. Another claimed their presence lowered property values. Blakely stood tall, absorbing it all, her mind already calculating next steps. A lawyer friend, a possible restraining order. But inside she wondered how much more they could take. When the crowd finally dispersed, grumbling about a formal HOA meeting next week, Juliana collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I can't do this anymore, Blake. My mom called earlier, she's suspicious. If she finds out, it will kill her." Blakely knelt beside her, wiping away tears. "We knew the risks when we moved here to be close to your new job. But love isn't a risk, it's our foundation. Remember the day we signed the papers at City Hall? Just us and the judge, who smiled like he understood. That day we promised to fight for this." Yet as she spoke, Blakely felt her own doubts creep in, the late-night conversations where she questioned if their happiness justified the isolation, the constant vigilance. They had sacrificed family holidays, fake smiles at office parties, and the simple joy of public affection, all for this quiet life in a neighborhood that now felt like enemy territory. The next morning the gossip spread like wildfire. Blakely drove to work, replaying the scene, her hands tight on the steering wheel. At the office, she forced a smile through meetings, but her thoughts drifted to Juliana, who would face the same stares at the elementary school, where she counseled children. By afternoon, a text from Juliana arrived. They're whispering in the teacher's lounge. I feel so exposed. Blakely replied with encouragement. But inside she ached for the woman she loved, the one who had taught her that vulnerability could be strength. That evening, as they prepared a simple dinner of pasta and salad, the phone rang. Juliana froze, her mother's number flashing on the screen. She answered on speaker, her voice bright but strained. Hi, Mom. The conversation started, innocent updates on work, the weather, but then the questions turned sharp. I heard from Cousin Maria that you have a roommate. A woman. Is everything okay, honey? You know the church group is praying for you to find a husband. Juliana's face paled, her free hand clutching Blakely's under the table. Mom, it's complicated. But the lie tasted bitter on her tongue because the truth burned hotter. As the call ended with her mother promising to visit soon, Juliana hung up and turned to Blakely, her eyes filled with a storm of love and terror. What are we going to do when she comes? I can't keep pretending. Blakely pulled her into a hug, their foreheads touching. We will tell her when the time is right. But deep down, Blakely knew time was running out, the walls closing in from every side. The price of their love was becoming clearer with each passing hour, the emotional toll of secrecy, the fear of losing everything they had built. Yet in that moment, holding Juliana close, Blakely reaffirmed her choice no matter the cost. The night stretched long with whispered plans and silent prayers for strength as the first cracks in their hidden world began to show. The doorbell rang at 8 the next morning, far too early for any welcome visitor. Juliana peeked through the curtain, her face draining of color. It's Mom and my brother Marco. They drove all night from Florida. Blakely set down her coffee mug, steeling herself for the storm she knew was coming. They had prepared as best they could, hiding any overt signs of their marriage. The joint photos tucked away, the rings slipped into pockets, but the air in the house already felt thick with dread. Mrs. Rivera burst through the door, a petite woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a cross necklace swinging against her blouse. Juliana, my baby, what is this I hear? She pulled her daughter into a hug, then held her at arm's length, scanning her face for signs of trouble. Marco followed, tall and broad-shouldered, his face set in a frown that spoke volumes. He nodded curtly at Blakely, the tension between them immediate and electric. The living room felt smaller as the family settled in, Mrs. Rivera launching into her concerns without pause. Your cousin saw you two at the grocery store acting too close. Holding hands in public. This is not the life I raised you for, Juliana. God has a plan for you, a husband, children, not this confusion. Blakely stood by the window, her back straight but her mind racing through escape routes. She had grown up in California where acceptance came easier, but moving to Ohio for Juliana's dream job had thrust her into a world where love like theirs was whispered about, not celebrated. Marco leaned forward, his voice low and accusing. This woman, Blakely, she's the one who turned you, isn't she? You were always such a good girl, going to Mass every Sunday. Now look at you living in sin under one roof. The words sliced deep because they echoed the very doubts Juliana had confessed in their quiet moments late at night, when the world felt too heavy. Juliana sat between them, her hands twisting in her lap, the internal war playing out across her features. Part of her, the dutiful daughter who had once dreamed of a traditional family, wanted to reassure them, to promise change. But the other part, the woman who had found true joy in Blakely's arms, the one who laughed freely and loved fiercely, refused to bend. Mom, Marco, it's not like that. Blakely is my partner, my everything. The admission hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. Mrs. Rivera gasped, crossing herself while Marco slammed his fist on the coffee table. Partner? You mean you are one of those? I won't stand for it. You come home with me now before you ruin your life completely. The argument escalated, voices rising as accusations flew. Mrs. Rivera quoted scripture. Her words, laced with love, twisted into judgment. Blakely tried to stay calm, explaining that their relationship was legal, committed, and private, but each defense only fueled the fire. Juliana's eyes darted between her family and Blakely, the conflict tearing her apart. In her mind she replayed childhood memories of Sunday masses, the comfort of faith now weaponized against her heart. Was loving Blakely a sin, or was denying it the greater betrayal? She felt the weight of her mother's disappointment like a physical force pressing on her chest, the fear of being disowned mingling with the terror of losing the woman who made her feel whole. Blakely stepped in, her voice firm yet compassionate. "Mrs. Rivera, we respect your beliefs, but this is our home, our life. Juliana is an adult who has chosen happiness." Marco sneered. "Happiness? You call hiding from the world happiness? If you really cared about her, you would let her go find a real future." The words hit Blakely like a punch because in her darkest hours she had wondered the same thing, wondering if her love was selfish, if it cost Juliana too much. But then she remembered their wedding day, the way Juliana had looked at her with pure certainty, vowing forever in front of that gentle judge. That memory anchored her now, giving her the strength to stand her ground. The visit dragged into hours with tears and raised voices until Mrs. Rivera finally stood, declaring they would stay at a nearby hotel but not before issuing an ultimatum. "Come to your senses, Juliana, or don't expect us at Christmas." Marco shot Blakely a final glare before following his mother out. As the door closed, Juliana sank to the floor sobbing. Blakely knelt beside her, pulling her close, rocking her gently. "I am so sorry, baby. I never wanted to come between you and them." But Juliana lifted her face, her eyes red but determined. "You didn't. They did by not seeing me." Still, the damage was done, the crack in her family widening into a chasm that threatened to swallow her peace. That night they lay awake in their bed, the one they had chosen together, discussing options. Move away, fight legally, or keep hiding. Blakely proposed consulting a lawyer friend, but Juliana hesitated, the moral weight of public exposure daunting. "What if the school fires me? What if we lose the house we worked so hard for?" Their conversation turned inward, exploring the sacrifices each had made. Blakely had distanced herself from her own family to avoid questions, while Juliana had stopped attending Mass to evade guilt. The price was steep: lost connections, strained trust, but the reward, their quiet nights of shared dreams and unconditional support, felt worth it in moments like this. By morning the neighborhood buzz had intensified. A note taped to their door from the HOA demanded a meeting in 2 days to discuss the complaint. Juliana read it aloud, her voice shaking, but Blakely took her hand. "We face it together. No more hiding in shadows." As they prepared for the day ahead, the internal battles raged on, Juliana questioning if her love was a test of faith, Blakely grappling with the guilt of pulling her into this fight. Yet through the turmoil their bond strengthened, forged in the fire of opposition. The confrontation with family had awakened something in both, a resolve to claim their truth, even if it meant paying the ultimate emotional price. The betrayal came from the least expected place. Sarah, their supposed ally from the PTA, a fellow counselor at Juliana's school, had always seemed supportive, with knowing smiles and coffee chats about work-life balance. But on Monday morning, Juliana walked into the principal's office to find Sarah sitting there, her face a mask of concern mixed with something sharper. The principal, a stern man in his 50s, cleared his throat. "We have received complaints, Juliana. Parents are worried about your lifestyle influencing the children. Sarah here felt it her duty to bring it to my attention." Juliana's world tilted. "Sarah, you promised." The woman avoided her eyes, mumbling about protecting the kids and community standards. It was a knife in the back, the kind that came from fear of association. Blakely received the news via frantic text, while in a client meeting, her phone buzzing insistently. She excused herself, stepping into the hallway, her blood boiling. "That traitor. We invited her to dinner last month." The professional threat was immediate, the principal suggesting unpaid leave while they investigated. Juliana sat in her car after work, tears streaming as she called Blakely. "I dedicated my life to these kids. Now I'm the problem." The petition circulated faster now, with more signatures added after the family visit, rumors spreading like poison. Neighbors avoided eye contact at the mailbox, whispering behind hands. One even crossed the street to avoid them. Blakely felt the isolation deep in her own job, secure for now, but colleagues starting to ask probing questions about her personal life. The moral dilemma gnawed at Juliana during long walks alone, questioning if their love justified the collateral damage to careers, reputations, and the innocent children caught in adult wars. Was it right to fight, or should she sacrifice for the greater good of peace? Blakely organized a counter-strategy, calling her lawyer friend, drafting a response to the HOA citing discrimination laws. But at home the tension peaked during a heated discussion. Juliana paced the living room. "Maybe they are right, Blake. Maybe I am confusing the kids by being me." Blakely grabbed her shoulders gently. "No, you are showing them that love comes in many forms." But the doubt lingered in Juliana's eyes, the internal voice of her upbringing whispering condemnation. The betrayal by Sarah amplified the pain, forcing Juliana to confront her own complicity in staying silent for so long. As the HOA meeting loomed, they spent evenings reviewing documents, the marriage certificate tucked in a folder, the deed proving joint ownership as spouses. Revealing it would change everything, but the cost of exposure weighed heavy. Juliana dreamed of her childhood home, the warm kitchen where her mother baked bread, now a place she might never return to. Blakely sacrificed sleep researching cases of similar discrimination, her protective instincts clashing with the fear of losing the woman she adored. The neighborhood turned colder, cars slowing as they passed, their house signs appearing on lawns about family values. A late-night confrontation with another neighbor, Mr. Ellis, brought it to a head. He knocked politely, but his words were blunt. "My grandkids play here. I don't want them seeing whatever this is." Blakely stepped out, her voice calm but edged. "This is our home, sir. Love isn't contagious." He shook his head, retreating, but the encounter left Juliana shattered, questioning every choice that led them here. The psychological toll mounted with each passing day, the constant vigilance eroding their joy. Yet in quiet moments they reaffirmed their commitment, hands intertwined, whispers of forever cutting through the noise. The day of the meeting arrived, the community center packed with familiar faces, now hostile. Whispers followed them as they entered. Juliana's hand trembled in Blakely's, the moral crossroads, clear, fight or flee. The air crackled with tension, the stage set for the revelation that would force everyone to reconsider their judgments. Through the betrayal and pressure, both women found a new strength, their love tested but unbroken, the path ahead uncertain, but theirs to walk. The community center buzzed with low murmurs as Blakely and Juliana took their seats at the front table facing the HOA board. Mrs. Hargrove presided like a judge, her gavel tapping for order. "We are here to address the complaint against residents at 142 Maple Lane. The accusations are clear: immoral cohabitation unsuitable for our family-oriented community." The room erupted in nods and scattered applause. Juliana kept her eyes on the folder in her lap, the marriage certificate indeed inside like a shield and a sword. Blakely stood first, her voice clear and measured. "We have listened to your concerns, and now we ask you to listen to the truth." She placed the documents on the table, the official stamps gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "This is our marriage certificate dated last spring. And this is the property deed showing we own this home as legal spouses." The room fell silent, then exploded in gasps. Mrs. Hargrove blinked rapidly, her face paling. "Married? But how? You never said." Juliana rose beside her, her earlier doubts melting into quiet defiance. "We didn't say because we feared exactly this. The judgment, the exclusion, the pain. But hiding has cost us more than you know, my family, my job security, our peace." She spoke of the internal struggles, the nights of tears, the fear of losing everything for loving openly. The board members shifted uncomfortably, some averting eyes as the reality sank in. One woman in the back muttered about legal technicalities, but another stood. "I didn't know. I thought it was just roommates." The tide began to turn slowly, murmurs of retraction rippling through the crowd. Yet the confrontation was not over. Mr. Ellis rose, his face flushed. "Even if legal, it's still against our values. Children need traditional role models." Blakely countered with facts, citing anti-discrimination laws, her legal research paying off. But the moral debate raged, personal stories emerging from neighbors who had lost family to similar prejudices. Juliana shared her mother's visit, the ultimatum that still echoed in her heart. The room divided, some defending their initial stance, others apologizing quietly. The betrayal by Sarah was mentioned, and the principal who had joined the meeting looked ashamed. As the meeting stretched, emotions ran high, Juliana facing the choice to forgive or hold grudges. Blakely watched her wife, the woman who had sacrificed so much, her heart swelling with pride and pain. The documents on the table symbolized their stand, the price paid in lost trust and sleepless nights now demanding recognition. Gradually the board voted to drop the complaint, but the damage lingered in awkward silences and averted gazes. As they left the center, a few neighbors approached with hesitant sorries, but the majority retreated in discomfort, the retraction forced but not fully heartfelt. That night at home, the weight lifted slightly, but new reflections emerged. Juliana stared at the ceiling. Was it worth it, Blake? The exposure, the stares. Blakely held her close. "Every scar we carry proves our love is real." The awakening was mutual, a deeper understanding of the societal forces that shaped their secrecy, and the personal growth born from enduring them. The neighborhood would never be the same, nor would they, but in the quiet they found solace in each other, the bond strengthened by the battles fought. Preparation for the fallout consumed the following days. Blakely and Juliana sat at their kitchen table reviewing notes from the meeting, the marriage papers now openly displayed on the mantel, a bold declaration. Juliana traced the edges of the certificate, her finger lingering on the date. I feel lighter but also exposed, like the world sees all my cracks. Blakely nodded, her own thoughts swirling with the sacrifices they had made. The family rift, the professional whispers. They argued not in anger but in raw honesty about next steps, whether to sell the house and move or stay and rebuild. The emotional climax built during a long walk in the local park, where they had once stolen secret moments. Juliana stopped by the bench, her voice breaking. I almost gave in, Blake. When Mom called again yesterday begging me to come home, I wondered if love meant letting go. The confession hung between them, heavy with the moral weight of choices that defined them. Blakely pulled her into an embrace under the oak trees. And I wondered if I was asking too much of you. But here we are, still choosing us. Their tears mingled, the release cathartic, the reaffirmation of love, a beacon in the storm. Back home they hosted a small gathering of supportive colleagues and distant friends, the first step toward openness. Conversations flowed with questions and stories, some painful, some hopeful. Juliana spoke of her awakening, the realization that decency was not defined by neighbors, but by kindness and commitment. Blakely shared the cost to her career, the subtle shifts in meetings now that rumors had spread to the city. Yet the joy in their eyes when they recounted their private wedding shone through the pain, proving the triumph of truth. The neighborhood reactions varied, some doors opening with casseroles and awkward apologies, others remaining closed. Mrs. Hargrove visited personally, her retraction stiff but sincere. I was wrong to assume. The deed changed everything. Juliana accepted the olive branch, but inside she pondered the conditional nature of the acceptance, tied to legal proof rather than human understanding. The internal reflection deepened their bond, each woman confronting her own prejudices absorbed from society. As days turned to weeks, the couple navigated the new normal. Family calls from Mrs. Rivera, tentative and probing, Marco sending a text of reluctant respect. The price had been paid in full, emotional scars, family fractures and community tension, but the awakening brought clarity. Love demanded courage and they had paid it willingly. In their backyard garden under the same sunset that once witnessed their vows, they danced slowly, no longer hiding the moment, pure and hard-won. The dust settled slowly over Willow Creek, with the neighborhood retracting its collective stance in quiet ways, signed petitions withdrawn, HOA notes deleted. Blakely returned to work with a new confidence, her colleagues offering cautious support, while Juliana resumed counseling sessions, her focus now enriched by personal insight into resilience. The house felt lighter, the once tense porch now a place for morning coffee and open conversations. Yet the scars remained, reminders of the battles fought, the betrayals endured, and the moral choices that defined their journey. Family reconciliation attempts trickled in, Mrs. Rivera sending a card with a Bible verse reinterpreted toward love, Marco calling to check on his sister. Juliana wept during the call, the partial mending a bittersweet victory. Blakely watched with pride, knowing the cost her wife had paid, the nights of doubt, the fear of eternal separation now yielding to fragile bridges. The couple reflected often on the price each had paid, Blakely her professional ease, Juliana her familial anchor, both their former anonymity. Support emerged unexpectedly from unexpected neighbors, a young family inviting them to barbecues, an elderly couple sharing stories of their own hidden pasts. The community evolved in fits and starts, some holding fast to old views, others awakening to the humanity behind the labels. Blakely and Juliana became symbols not by choice, but by circumstance, their story sparking quiet discussions at block parties and school events. In the end, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky gold, Blakely turned to Juliana, her hand in hers. We did it. We stood. Juliana smiled, the happiness in her eyes mirroring that garden embrace, the romantic joy reclaimed. Their love had triumphed not without cost but with profound growth. The neighborhood learned a lesson in assumptions, but the true awakening belonged to the women who had navigated the minefield of prejudice and emerged stronger. When the world forces you to hide your love or lose everything dear, is standing in your truth the ultimate victory or the greatest sacrifice?